hppodcraft.com.
West of Arkham, the hills rise wild, and there are valleys with deep woods that no axe has ever cut. There are dark, narrow glens where the trees slope fantastically, and where thin brooklets trickle without ever having caught the glint of sunlight. On the gentler slopes, there are farms, ancient and rocky, with squat, moss-coated cottages brooding eternally over old New England secrets in the lee of great ledges. But these are all vacant now. The wide chimneys crumbling and the shingled sides bulging perilously beneath low gambrel roofs. The old folk have gone away, and foreigners do not like to live there. French Canadians have tried it, Italians have tried it, and the Poles have come and departed. It is not because of anything that can be seen or heard or handled, but because of something that is imagined. The place is not good for the imagination, and does not bring restful dreams at night. It must be this which keeps the foreigners away, for old Ammi Pierce has never told them of anything he recalls from the strange days. Ammi, whose head has been a little queer for years, is the only one who still remains or who ever talks of the strange days. And he dares to do this because his house is so near the open fields and the traveled roads around Arkham.
That is, of course, referring to Arkham, Massachusetts, a location founded in the mind of author H.P. Lovecraft and subsequently visited in the imaginations of many others, including myself, Chad Pfeiffer.
As well as myself, Chris Lackey.
And luckily, we've got an archaeologist with us to explore Arkham today, Paul McLean.
Hello, nice to be on the show. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming, Paul. Now, some of you might know Paul. Paul was on a previous episode of ours as a reader.
The Lurking Fear.
The Lurking Fear. But you probably know Paul from his own podcast from yogshothot.com.
It's Yog Radio.
Yog Radio.
Yeah,
it's just Yog Radio?
We just call it Yog Radio. Yeah, Y-O-G.
Well, that's an excellent show. It's about the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game and other things in the gaming world for Lovecraft. Yeah.
It focuses mostly on that, but you've had some great literary scholars on that show.
We've been very fortunate. We've had people like S.T. Joshi been on the show.
Yeah.
We've interviewed people like Brian Lumley. We've actually managed to get him on.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding, really?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that took 2 years to sort out. Some of the interviews take a while to arrange, so we've got a few.
Yeah, but it's a great show. Even if you're not a necessarily a fan of the role playing game, there's often little tidbits that people that love Lovecraft can get out of there.
Yeah, we'll put a link up to the show, and if you guys want to hear some more great Lovecraftian podcasting, definitely check it out. This is, of course, the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
Oh, at hppodcraft.com.
That's right, and we're available on iTunes, Stitcher, the Zune Marketplace. We're everywhere. Anywhere you can listen to a podcast, we are. And I just want to say this before we move on. Last show that we posted, we got too much traffic, and the site went down.
We crashed. That's awesome. I mean, it's terrible, but it's great.
The great thing was that we had our site designer and our webmaster available, Mike J. Mann, there to save us from disaster. He fixed everything up immediately and had us running again very quickly.
We don't give him enough props. Mike, I love you.
We're actually going to have him on the show in a few weeks, I believe, when we cover the thing in the Moonlight. He's going to guest host.
He's going to guest host with us.
So that'll be cool. But in the meantime, you can actually buy a shirt with our show logo on it, which he designed, over at cafepress.com/hppodcraft. Probably later we'll make some more shirts on our own, but we wanted to get those up there. If you want to give Mike some props, go over there and buy the shirt. They're in all sorts of styles and colors, and there's even some, I don't know, there's a throw pillow and everything the Cafe Press has to offer has got our logo on it.
I'm planning on burning all of my old T-shirts and just buying these.
Me too.
Excellent. The opening reading there, you may have also noticed the familiar voice of Andrew Leman.
Yes, he's back.
I actually yesterday went with him to go see an art exhibition out in Alhambra, California, dedicated to H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, wow. How was that?
It was really good. It was at the Gallery Nucleus. I can actually, now that was unfortunately the last weekend of the show.
Oh,
yeah, it's been running for a month or so. But they have a nice website, so I'll put up the link to the exhibition on our show notes, and from there you can actually see all the pieces, and if you like some of them, you can even buy prints.
Yeah, I've seen some of them. They're really pro. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, the artists, some of them are Hollywood production designers who just love Lovecraft. Some of them, there was even a couple of pieces from a fellow who's working on Guillermo del Toro's Mountains of Madness adaptation. And then there were also student pieces and some younger artists from all over the country and I think even all over the world contributed stuff. So there's paintings, there's sculptures, all sorts of great stuff. We'll put the link up and hopefully people will enjoy that art.
Yeah, great. Let's jump into the story. Let's go swimming in The Color Out of Space.
In those opening paragraphs of The Color Out of Space, we get a setting, the hilly farmlands west of Arkham, and we meet a man, Ami Pierce.
Ami, yeah. Now, Ami, you may or may not know, this is one of the names of Lot's daughter's sons, which is also his son in the biblical Lot, if you know.
Right, well,
you know
Lot
yeah.
got it on with his daughter.
Well, they got it on with. He got him drunk, and then,
Right.
you know, because they needed to have kids. I don't know why that was. It's the Bible, you know.
Right.
Incest, it happens.
Sure.
But Robert M. Price, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he wrote a biblical antecedent for The Color Out of Space, which just sort of compares The Color Out of Space to the story of Lot and all the things that happened with him.
To me, this story feels more... I'm not a biblical scholar. I actually don't even really know what the story of Lot is too well. Maybe as we go on, you can explain that a little bit. But this reminds me more of the story of Job, because wasn't it Job that just got punished over and over and over by God to test his faith?
Yeah.
I mean, the family in this story just gets...
Man, it's so... This story is so sad and so scary, and it's so good. Let's get into it. Let's get into the story.
Well, Ami is the only fellow who lives out in this part of the country now, and he knows a lot about what happened and what the story's going to be about. But our main character, the unnamed protagonist, is a surveyor. Yeah, and he's out here to construct a reservoir, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's this the valley that's going to be, turned into a reservoir for Arkham. And now Lovecraft, actually, there was an area, the Swift River Valley, which got turned into a reservoir also. He wrote in a letter in 1935, "The trip through the doomed Swift River Valley must have held more than a slight touch of melancholy. I went through it 8 years ago, not long after its doom was first pronounced, and well nigh groaned at the future destruction of exquisite old villages like Dana and its neighbors." So
that was going on.
Yeah, this happened in 26. As Lovecraft was writing the story, this was happening, so I'm sure this definitely kind of fueled the location for it.
Sure. Well, he was obviously sad to see some of those old towns get covered up by water. Now, the people in Arkham aren't necessarily too upset that this place is about to get flooded.
No, sir.
The protagonist says,
When I went into the hills and vales to survey for the new reservoir, they told me the place was evil. They told me this in Arkham, and because that is a very old town full of witch legends, I thought the evil must be something which grandams had whispered to children through centuries. The name Blasted Heath seemed to me very odd and theatrical, and I wondered how it had come into the folklore of a Puritan people. Then I saw that dark westward tangle of glens and slopes for myself, and ceased to wonder at anything besides its own elder mystery. It was morning when I saw it, but shadow lurked always there. The trees grew too thickly, and their trunks were too big for any healthy New England wood. There was too much silence in the dim alleys between them, and the floor was too soft with the dank moss and mattings of infinite years of decay.
the Blasted Heath.
Yeah.
That's a crucial part of the story. Now, what's a heath?
Ooh, I know that one.
Oh, you do?
Ah.
I do. It's actually a dwarf shrub habitat found mainly in infertile acidic soils. He says, reading off the Wikipedia page, but I didn't know what it was. It's we have a few of them. It's kind of like
it's like a moor.
It's like a moorland area.
Yeah.
They're kind of mixed together. But I always think it was kind of a high area of kind of low shrubland, that kind of thing. Quite desolate. Yeah.
But Blasted Heath is actually the name of my new Lovecraftian speed metal band.
Fantastic.
No way.
Yeah. We shred, dude. I got to tell you.
Blasted Heath.
Yeah, it's great. It's
Can you
good
get
stuff.
that on iTunes?
You cannot yet get that on iTunes.
Hey, you remember that metal band called Hate Beak?
No.
It's an awesome metal band, and their lead singer is a bird.
What?
Yeah, they have like a pair. I'll have to look it up again. It's been a while since I looked, but I know that their lead singer is a bird, so they just rock out, and the bird goes like, bark, 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 bark. Yeah.
Wait, is it actually a bird, or it's a man dressed up as a bird?
Oh no, it's a real bird. Is their lead singer?
Like a parrot?
Yeah, I think it's a parrot or one of these, birds that. Well, I don't know.
We'll look that up. Put that on the show notes. This is awesome.
Okay. Yeah, Hate Beak. Check them out.
Hate Beak.
Now, the term Blasted Heath actually comes from Macbeth.
Yes, it does.
After the witches predict that Macbeth will be king, he says,
Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence, or why upon this blasted heath you stop our way with such prophetic greeting. Speak, I charge you.
That's where he pulled it from. In fact, Lovecraft even mentions later in the text, he says, it's as if the poet coined the phrase from having seen this one particular region. So, the poet referring to
So
Mr.
this place,
Shakespeare.
the Blasted Heath, really epitomizes that.
That's right. He compares it to a landscape by Salvatore Rosa.
Oh, yeah, good old Salvatore.
What, you guys know anything about?
Yeah, he was an Italian painter, died in 1673, and he had wild, desolate landscapes. That was kind of his thing.
Right. We'll put up a link to some images. I think he was a satirist, a playwright, and all these other things, but his landscapes are what really stuck with people because they look so haunted and they're so different from the pastoral landscapes of the period.
Right.
As the surveyor says, when he finally sees the Blasted Heath, he doesn't wonder that folks are leery of it. In fact, he thinks it must be the outcome of some fire or something like that, because it's just totally, there's no vegetation.
No, it's just kind of a fine gray dust that's all over everything.
It's about 5 acres, which I think is like a little bigger than a football field, maybe.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't even have approached this area, the surveyor, if it wasn't for his job. But it looks like it's been eaten by acid, and there's this, like you say, like a fine gray dust or ash everywhere.
Yeah.
But the wind doesn't seem to disturb it or kick it up.
No. And it's pretty much contained to this one area, but it's sort of encroaching over this road.
Right. There's a great couple of sentences.
At twilight, dreading to repass that ominous spot, I walked circuitously back to the town by the curving road on the south. I vaguely wished some clouds would gather, for an odd timidity about the deep, skyey voids above had crept into my soul.
Now, this story is awesome, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not much to make fun of, but right there, that's a gem. The skyey voids. To describe the sky, he's using the name of the object to describe it. Like, that's like saying, I went to the bathroom and relieved myself into the toilety bowl. It's skyey void. It is the sky.
Exactly. Well, you know.
I found that really funny. Okay, well, at that night in Arkham, after he notices the Blasted Heath, the fella starts asking people about it.
Yeah, and they go, that's back in the strange days.
Right. People keep saying, we're not going to tell you anything, but especially don't listen to crazy old Ami Pierce, right? So that's the first thing he does. He goes out to see Ami. Ami lives out at the edge of the woods in this old house, and he goes out there to see him. The survey knocks. Eventually he comes to the door, and he's this old man with a white beard. He's kind of worn out and dismal, but after some small talk, our protagonist finds out he's actually quite bright.
Mm-hmm.
And he's different from other old men he's dealt with when he's been flooding areas before or surveying to do such, and that Ami seems kind of relieved that it's going to happen.
Relief was all that he showed. Relief at the doom of the dark ancient valleys through which he had roamed all his life. They were better underwater now. Better underwater since the strange days. And with this opening, his husky voice sank low, while his body leaned forward and his right forefinger began to point shakily and impressively.
We're about to get the story of what happened in those strange days.
This is the story. It's not just the framing of the story. But, well, actually, we don't quite get it yet. He says, oh, okay, Ami told me the story, and it freaked me out and upset me. And I'm never going to come back here. I'm never going to drink the water.
Never going to drink the water.
From Arkham, yes.
Don't buy Arkham water.
Yeah, he goes to Boston the next day and he resigns his job after he hears the story. It freaks him out so much. It's a good point, though. Most bottled water does come from a municipal source somewhere.
Yeah.
So check your bottled water because it could be coming from Arkham Springs. After we get that little piece of knowledge, then Ami does launch into the story.
It all began, old Ami said, with the meteorite. Before that time, there had been no wild legends at all since the witch trials. And even then, these western woods were not feared half so much as the small island in the Miskatonic, where the devil held court beside a curious stone altar older than the Indians. These were not haunted woods, and their fantastic dusk was never terrible, till the strange days. Then there had come that white noontide cloud, that string of explosions in the air, and that pillar of smoke from the valley far in the wood. And by night, all Arkham had heard of the great rock that fell out of the sky and bedded itself in the ground beside the well at the Nahum Gardner place. That was the house which had stood where the Blasted Heath was to come. The trim, white Nahum Gardner house amidst its fertile gardens and orchards.
Our third character that we met in that paragraph, and the person who's sort of the Lot or the Job character in here, is Nahum Gardner. And I think Nahum has an Old Testament origin, that name.
Or Nam?
I don't know.
I said Nahum.
Nahum.
Yeah, because it's an anagram of human.
What?
Oh, look at that. It is.
Nam is also, I didn't realize that, but Nam is also an Old Testament name. Nam
right,
the Ecclioshite.
He's a prophet of some sort.
He's a minor prophet.
Oh, that's cool. That's very clever that his first name is an anagram of human, and then his last name is Gardner, since so much is related to the vegetation that comes up out of the ground.
Oh, look at that.
Well, Nahum after this happens, Nahum goes to town to tell people about this stone, this meteorite that dropped off on his property, and he stops at Ami's house. Now, Ami, at the time of the story, in the 80s, is about 40 years old, and I think Nahum's about in his 50s or something.
Yeah.
Ami goes back to the farm with his wife, and 3 professors come down from Miskatonic, because obviously everybody saw this thing land or saw it shooting through the sky, so they're very interested.
And they want to check it out. Well, so first of all, he said that when they get there, he goes, this meteorite shrunk. It was 7 feet across. Now it's only 5 feet across. And they're going, whatever, a meteorite won't shrink. That doesn't make any sense. So they just kind of play it off, and then they start poking it around, and it's sort of metallic, more like plastic. They say it's got the consistency of plastic, and they take an old pail and they kind of gouge out a chunk of it and put it in this pail and run off with it, but it starts burning or eating through the pail.
Yeah, and even as they're carrying it away, that sliver begins to grow smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, it's shrinking, like something is going on with it.
Now, they get it to the lab, and they start doing tests on it. It doesn't exhibit any earthly qualities, this sliver. It won't cool, ever. And in experiments, it just doesn't do anything it normally should.
Yeah.
When they heat it further, however, it displays this kind of band of colors, which aren't in the normal spectrum.
With a spectroscope, he's checking it out. Now, this section of the story is really... chemically based.
Oh, yes.
There's a good few paragraphs in here.
Well, I mean, Lovecraft himself loved chemistry after astronomy, which I think he did up to about 1916, mid-20s. He decided to move over into chemistry. So I think he was indulged by his grandfather Whipple with chemistry sets and things like this. So don't be surprised if you see lots more chemistry appearing in Lovecraft stories later on.
Oh, really?
And I have a quote actually from one of the letters here. He talks about he had his own spectroscopic analysis kit when he was a kid.
That's pretty advanced.
Yeah, so here, hold on. I got a quote for you. One phase of chemistry in which I dabbled was spectrum analysis, and I still have my spectroscope, a rather low-priced diffraction instrument costing $15. Wow, that's expensive.
That's actually pretty expensive.
For back then. I have also a still cheaper pocket spectroscope, which was the delight of my fellow students at HSH, which is Hope Street High School. It's unbelievably tiny. Will go into the vest pocket without making much of a bulge.
I didn't know you could get them that small. That's amazing.
Yeah, so there you go.
But the professors come back after testing that sliver, and they go back out to the farm, and they see that the meteorite has shrunk since the last time they saw it.
Yeah.
And so they gouge deeper into it to take another sample, and they uncover the core of it.
Yeah, he jabs right into it.
They had uncovered what seemed to be the side of a large, colored globule embedded in the substance. The color, which resembled some of the bands in the meteor's strange spectrum, was almost impossible to describe, and it was only by analogy that they called it color at all. Its texture was glossy, and upon tapping it appeared to promise both brittleness and hollowness. One of the professors gave it a smart blow with a hammer, and it burst with a nervous little pop. Nothing was emitted, and all trace of the thing vanished with the puncturing. It left behind a hollow spherical space about 3 inches across, and all thought it probable that others would be discovered as the enclosing substance wasted away.
Ugh, so weird.
And so do you think that tapping it with a hammer was a bad thing?
Yes.
Well, I mean, they're scientists. I mean, that's what they do. They poke things,
Yeah.
But I mean, this really sticks in with Lovecraft's universal concept. We have to be careful because as we explore and uncover things, we're going to start exploring and uncovering things that are bad and that we don't ever really want to uncover.
Sure.
And I think this specific part of the story is sort of just showing that these men of science braving into this unknown area, and it's going to bite them in the ass.
I know that Lovecraft wasn't a big fan of other science fiction stories of his time because the aliens were so human, and they had human desires and even human physiology, where here the visitor, you can't even conceive of what the heck this thing is. It's not even a corporeal body, and its intentions are completely a mystery. And I asked that because maybe it was a bad thing when they hit it with a hammer, maybe it wasn't. It's hard to know.
Maybe, who knows? Maybe it slowed down the whole thing. Maybe if they didn't hit it, it would have killed everybody there in an instant,
It's hard to know.
Who knows?
Well, they drill a little into the meteor looking for more globules, but they don't find any. They take the new sample back to the lab, but it still won't do anything natural, and the professors finally conclude it's just the same thing we have, right? It's just something unknowable from the great cosmos.
Yeah.
They don't get a chance for more investigation because the next night there's a storm.
That's right. Well, it's like a lightning magnet. It gets hit quite a bit, and there's nothing left by the morning.
It got hit by lightning 6 times.
Yeah, that's right. Just absorbed it all. Bam. There's nothing left. gone.
Crazy.
Yeah, and the researchers only have a week before their sample disappears as well, so eventually it's just all gone.
Will Murray speculated that Lovecraft got that whole lightning hitting a thing many times from Charles Fort, who had an account of these things called thunderstones, which are these supposed rocks that would attract lightning and stuff like that. So,
By the way, Thunderstones is the first track on the Blasted Heat.
Fantastic. Sign me up for that.
The local press gets wind of the meteor and all this. We learn when they talk about that he's married. Well, we knew he was married, but he has 3 sons.
Yes.
And by all accounts, he's a good guy, very genial. He even seems kind of proud that the meteorite landed on him.
wait, does he have 2 sons and a daughter?
No, he's got 3 sons.
3 sons, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I guess one of the names sounded kind of sissy to me.
Well, yeah, one of the sons thinks he was born a woman, but physically, he's a man.
He's a man. Yeah.
A very
He's a
accepting
boy.
family.
Right. Merwin.
absolutely.
That's the name. Merwin. I
Yeah,
thought it was
Merwin.
a girl's name. I'm sorry. My mistake.
Things start subtly from this point. It's a hot summer, and through July and August, Nahum works hard at haying his pasture. The only thing he has at this point is he complains of feeling a little more tired than usual.
But what happened? I mean, during the harvest time, there's
Right.
great big fruit, and it's beautiful and it looks great. You know, it's like, yes, I'm scoring big time. But when,
The apples and pears are huge.
Yeah.
Apples and pears, isn't that slang for up the stairs?
It absolutely
Cockney
is. That's
slang?
Cockney rhyming slang. Up the apples and pears for the stairs. You're right. Probably
Yay,
tasted about the same.
America!
You are, yeah, you got it right. These probably tasted the same as carpet stairs as well, I must admit. Because that's one of the things they say is that beautiful, lush-looking vegetation and fruit, but you bite into it, not going to be happy with the results.
no, everybody hated this stuff. They
Bitter,
thought-
horrible.
It was terrible fruit. And he just realized, oh, wait, all this awesome stuff that's happening right now is the exact opposite of awesome. It is.
Yeah,
That's
there,
right.
there goes all the agricultural prizes. Sorry, not this year.
Yeah, somehow the meteorite poisoned the soil,
Yeah.
and that sucks for them, obviously, because that's their whole
Yeah,
their
they're farmers.
job. That's
Yeah.
they're farmers, so they have a really bad harvest. And when winter comes, Ami doesn't see Nahum and the family too often. They're not showing up at church events really, and when he does talk to them, they admit to feeling kind of depressed and disquieted, and they say that certain things on his land are bothering him.
Nahum himself gave the most definite statement of anyone when he said he was disturbed about certain footprints in the snow. They were the usual winter prints of red squirrels, white rabbits, and foxes. But the brooding farmer professed to see something not quite right about their nature and arrangement. He was never specific, but appeared to think that they were not as characteristic of the anatomy and habits of squirrels and rabbits and foxes as they ought to be. Ami listened without interest to this talk until one night, when he drove past Nahum's house in his sleigh on the way back from Clark's Corners. There had been a moon, and a rabbit had run across the road, and the leaps of that rabbit were longer than either Ami or his horse liked.
The creepy rabbit.
Don't want to meet that rabbit at night.
No, it's kind of like Bugs Bunny when he dresses up like a lady.
So it's unnatural.
It's unnatural, exactly.
There's another a great little note there too. The McGregor boys from Meadow Hill, they shoot a woodchuck out by Nahum's farm, but they
Oh,
don't
right.
like the proportions of its body or face. It says its face had taken on an expression which no one ever saw in a woodchuck before.
It's so weird.
Is a woodchuck a bird? Because we don't have woodchucks.
No,
What's
groundhogs.
a ground? Oh, right.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
have groundhogs.
Well, no.
Like Groundhog Day, like large beavery type
Yeah, they're kind of
creatures?
like
Yeah.
beavers, but without tails. Well, I mean, they have little tails, but they're not flap tails.
And they have a range of expressions. Sometimes there's a happy woodchuck, a
Yeah.
sad woodchuck.
Yeah.
I've seen,
But this one is-
some woodchucks look presidential even, but this woodchuck, the expression on its face,
Yeah,
indescribable.
you can't. Yeah, don't even go there.
So, and people in town, they're chin wagging about this. You know, they say the snow melts faster around Nahum's, and
Yeah.
they over at Potter's General Store, they start talking about those skunk cabbages that come up.
Right, and this now skunk cabbage, just for the record, is it's a stemless, leafy plant that actually smells bad. Hence,
Oh, okay.
hence why it's called skunk cabbage.
Yeah.
yeah.
So it wasn't good
the
to begin
myth-
with.
No, it's naturally occurring in New England. However, this skunk cabbage has an unnatural hue to it.
Yeah, colors that don't make any sense, right?
People haven't seen this color, before, except in the meteorite. That's the last time that's been
Right.
seen. Yeah.
That was a hard one for me too, and it probably, rightly so, to imagine cabbages with an unearthly hue.
Or just you can't help but you try and think of a new color. Like you just can't do it. I mean, like
Right.
your brain tries, works at it, but it doesn't happen. You can't.
The trees around there are strange as well.
The trees budded prematurely around Nahum's, and at night they swayed ominously in the wind. Nahum's second son, Thaddeus, a lad of 15, swore that they swayed also when there was no wind, but even the gossips would not credit this. Certainly, however, restlessness was in the air. The entire Gardner family developed the habit of stealthy listening, though not for any sound which they could consciously name. The listening was, indeed, rather a product of moments when consciousness seemed half to slip away. Unfortunately, such moments increased week by week till it became common speech that something was wrong with all Nahum's folks.
A side note that I meant to bring up earlier when we first talked about this color was that Lovecraft wasn't the first person to have this idea of this unknowable spectrum color thing. Ambrose Bierce in The Damned Thing talked about, and I'll give it right here.
Is that a story?
It is a story, The Damned Thing. Yeah, it was written in 1893, and Lovecraft has obviously read it. But he says, he's talking about this creature, this monster. The human eye is an imperfect instrument. Its range is but a few octaves of the real chromatic scale. I am not mad. There are colors we cannot see. And God help me, that damn thing is of such color. That's what he says in the story. But so Lovecraft, obviously, that sort of inspired him. And that's what's so great about this story. It's not a monster, and it's not a disease. It's this really other, alien, strange thing. It's so cool. It's so good.
In From Beyond, when the machine comes on, I believe that the narrator in there begins to see some colors that are outside of the normal spectrum as well.
Right.
So it is conceptually, it's something that he's visited before. In the spring, people all stop using the road by Nahum's farm because the vegetation is so crazy looking and odd colored. Nahum, he leaves the soil around his house as is, hoping it kind of draws all the poison from the meteorite out.
And he farms up the
summer.
hill away from the area because he has more land than just where the meteor is affected.
When the insects come in May, it gets all crazy.
Of course, it says their aspects in motion are unlike any other. They're unnatural. Something's wrong with these bugs, and probably has something to do with the meteorite. Or at least that's what everybody's saying. The
family, they're just sort of watching every night in different directions for something they don't even know what. Although they all do see the swollen maple trees swaying at night, even though there's no wind.
Yeah.
And a windmill salesman from Bolton drives by one night and notices that the whole farm seems to have a sort of luminosity about it.
A windmill salesman?
Of course.
How does he get those from house to house when he knocks on the door?
His display case is huge.
What career advice did he get?
Near the end of May, the cow's milk goes bad as well.
Yeah.
All of the gardeners seem to be failing physically and mentally a bit. Only Ami really notices this because he's the only one who'll come around and see them.
Right. Yeah. Ami's wife used to go over and visit with Nam's wife all the time, but they just kind of stopped seeing each other.
In June, unfortunately, Nam's wife goes mad.
Yeah.
It happened in June, about the anniversary of the meteor's fall, and the poor woman screamed about things in the air which she could not describe. In her raving, there was not a single specific noun, but only verbs and pronouns. Things moved and changed and fluttered, and ears tingled to impulses which were not wholly sounds. Something was taken away. She was being drained of something. Something was fastening itself on her that ought not to be. Someone must make it keep off. Nothing was ever still in the night. The walls and windows shifted. Nahum did not send her to the county asylum, but let her wander about the house as long as she was harmless to herself and others. Even when her expression changed, he did nothing. But when the boys grew afraid of her, and Thaddeus nearly fainted at the way she made faces at him, he decided to keep her locked in the attic. By July, she had ceased to speak and crawled on all fours, and before that month was over, Nahum got the mad notion that she was slightly luminous in the dark, as he now clearly saw was the case with the nearby vegetation.
It's that great staple of literature, locking the crazy wife in the attic.
It may have been that Lovecraft was thinking of Charlotte Perkins Gilman's celebrated tale, The Yellow Wallpaper, from about the 1890s. Which
that's right.
Notes, I think it was in reference to the supernatural horror in literature, rises to a classic level, and subtly delineating the madness which crawls over a woman dwelling in the hideously papered room where a mad woman was once confined. So that does sound familiar.
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah.
It's nice
So,
to
I
see
mean,
that.
it sounds like maybe he borrowed it a little bit. But he also said...
Oh, I didn't know that he'd actually commented on reading that story before.
Oh, yeah.
Because I always, when I read the Yellow Wallpaper, even when, that's a pretty big, high school literature, a lot of gets taught. And even then I remember feeling like it was sort of Lovecraftian, the way the shapes and the wallpaper begin to move and how she slowly goes mad.
Well, he also talks about, in a letter Lovecraft wrote, living things, usually insane or idiotic members of the family, concealed in the garrets or secret rooms of old houses are, or at least have been literal realities in rural New England. I was told by someone of how he stopped at a lone farmhouse on some errand years ago and was nearly frightened out of his wits by the opening of a sliding panel in a kitchen wall and the appearance at the aperture of the most horrible, dirt-caked and matted, bearded face he had ever conceived possible to exist.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That was in a letter to Bernard Dwyer that Lovecraft wrote. But you know what Lovecraft says in there? He says, I was told by someone.
Yeah, sure.
That's his source that he
Must
cites.
be
It's a friend of a friend. Yeah. Well, it also reminds me of Jane Eyre.
Right, yeah.
There's a crazy wife locked in the attic in that book as well.
Yeah.
Who creeps about at night and scares Jane.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say about that, though, too, is an H.P. Lovecraft encyclopedia suggests a possible closer inspiration to Lovecraft, which was his mother.
All right.
Who maybe not the locked up portion of it, but in her mental illness reportedly claimed to see weird and fantastic creatures that rushed out from behind buildings and from corners at dark.
Yeah.
So she was seeing things in the air too. So
Yeah. But back to the story. I mean, things are going so badly for him and his family. And one of the things, and you said that this is about, reminds you of Job a lot. And it does, because he's done nothing wrong.
It's undeserved, absolutely
It's
undeserved.
totally undeserved. And that's another thing that makes this even more horrible. It's like bad things happen to good people,
It's completely amoralistic. There's no, no moral function to that.
No.
the horses stampede and make for the hills. It says when they finally catch them that they're just unmanageable. Something snapped in their brains.
Yeah.
And they all have to be shot. He has to actually borrow one of Ami's horses to try and get work done. Although now the vegetation that had swollen so much is now turning brittle and gray like the grass has.
Yeah.
Even the stuff that was colorful before.
Yeah.
And the strangely puffed insects are all dying, and the bee. It says the bees had taken to the woods. So even the bees are out of there.
All right.
The wife is screaming constantly up in there in the attic, and the family's not going around anymore. The boys aren't even going to school, and when Ami visits, he thinks that the well water probably isn't very good. So maybe that well is a good place to stop for.
Oh, right.
this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. It's because, maybe you shouldn't be drinking the well water. Yeah. And Nam goes, it's fine.
glug, glug, glug.
Fine.
Buy shares in Arkham.
But this is, it's so good and conceptually, and it's just really well written. And, it's great when you get a Lovecraft story that's a page turner. And this really is one of those.
And this was Lovecraft's favorite story.
It was.
Yeah, absolutely, because it had so inhuman in that aspect, amoralistic, inhuman, unknowable.
Yeah, in many letters, Lovecraft commented on this as his best tale, his best story.
Yeah, he says specifically, most of my monsters fail altogether to satisfy my sense of the cosmic, the abnormally chromatic entity in The Color Out of Space being the only one of the lot which I take any pride in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's saying a lot, because this was a guy who was pretty hard on his own work.
Yeah.
I think his estimation of his own work in this case is absolutely right. It's a great story.
It's a really great story. And that is going to be it for this week. I want to thank Andrew for reading. He did a wonderful job. And Mike Mann for bailing us out in our time of need. And
our guest host this and for the next episode.
Yeah, you'll join us for the next episode, yeah, Paul?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thank
Absolutely.
you very much. Cheers.
Great. With that, I'm Chris Lackey.
I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And this has been the HP Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
At hppodcraft.com.
hppodcraft.com.